Okay, so today I think a lot of Webby and a lot of universes, all the topics. So this one, universe prompts, when to use them and how to create them. So yeah, I think it's a very commonly used feature. So I'll say you'll use them a lot. So uh, so I'm gonna go through a few techniques and few flavors of how and where you can use them, and then you'll be able to explore and build upon on that a lot. So I'll quickly go through the slides and then I'll show you in the actual environment. Um, uh, so whenever you have a Webby query and you see this kind of filters of any object that has the yellow funnel icon, they are the predefined filters. So there are certain filters which are defined for you already in the universe itself. Okay, and not all of them are prompted, but you can set them up as a prompt, and that's what we are going to cover here. So for example, in the screenshot, you can see which order years. So this is
Hey,
gonna.
Renali, we're not seeing your
Yep.
we're not seeing your screen.
You're not seeing the PowerPoint.
No, we're just seeing the Zoom your Zoom
Oh,
screen.
okay. Let me stop and. mm, okay, it's probably. Uh, okay, let's see. Do you see it now?
Yes, yes, we see it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thanks for letting me know. All right. So this is the very first slide. I was showing how these yellow funnel icons, they indicate that these are predefined filters in universe, and then they can be set them up as static filters, but also can be set up as prompts. In this case, you can see when I run the report, it prompts for the user to choose the year. So I can choose the year from the list of values that is associated with this particular filter and the prompt. And then that comes up in the actual report. And if you look at the actual SQL script that's running in the background, it passes that value, 2010, that I chose in the prompt. And before you choose the prompt, this is how it's going to look like in the SQL. And that's based on how it is defined in the universe. So, and you can see this at prompt, that's primarily what we are going to cover today. It is defined in the business layer. You start as defining a new filter under any of the folders. A lot of times designers choose to group them as their own in their own folder where you will find all the prompted filters, but sometimes they can also place them in the logically related folders. So in this case, for example, if I'm creating a prompted filter related to order date, that's where I'm adding. And that particular prompt, which I just showed in the previous screen, it's defined as order date dot year. That's the object. That's the column, and then the prompt. I'm gonna show that in more detail and go over the options. So as you can see, it's at prompt, and then the text which order years. So if I go back a few screen back, when it prompts, it asks this question, and that's basically the message of the prompt text, which order year. And that's precisely, this is where it's actually defined. And then the data type is numeric, which is defined here by N, and it can be A for alphanumeric, D for date, DT for date time, and there are a few more other options. And then the next one is order date / order year, which means it is the order year. That particular object will be used to list the values. So for the list of values from which a user will choose the value will come from this particular object. And then multi, which means I'll be allowed to choose more than one value. And then constraint, that means I can choose only from that list. Okay. So yes, I can, this is the text. I can choose multiple values, and the list of values is coming from the order year object. And you can see that there is no other way for me to actually type a year. I have to choose from this particular list, which is coming from this option called constraint. And this is all defined in the universe. This is actually where we define in the universe. The best place to go is to open up the SQL Assistant, and then under the functions, you will see this add prompt function available, and below here it lists all the options. So standalone prompt, the first thing you need to define there is a message, the actual question of the text that will pop up, and then the data type, and then the list of values. The list of values can come from a particular dimension object already defined there, which I showed in the last object, that it was coming from order year, or it can be an actual values. Literally, you can list all of them, maybe a list of 5 or 6 texts or anything that it needs to be. You define them right here. Or you can actually associate with a list of value that you can define within universe. And I'll show you that, how it's done. And then mono or multi. So whether you are going to allow them to choose multi-value or just one value, you can define here. Any or leaf, it's something, if there is any hierarchy in the list of value, you can either allow them to choose any of them or just the main nodes. And then free, constraint, primary key, that defines whether you can choose, you can type your own values, or you are kind of restricted to the list of values provided that you define with that. And then persistent or not persistent. The default value, if you don't specify here, that will be not persistent. But persistent means when you rerun the report, it will keep the value you selected in the last run. And optionally, you can define a default value. So that's the syntax. And in the universe, I'll show you that you can actually go into more details of this hint that you see here and find more information. I'll show you that. Okay, there are different ways we can choose. One is add prompt along with add select. Actually, before I come here, let me show you the Webby report. Heather, can you confirm if you see the Webby report, or do you still see the?
I still see your PowerPoint presentation right now.
Okay, I think it's showing by application. Let me see if I can show the entire screen. Okay.
We see Webby. You're good.
Okay, perfect. So this is a Webby report. Let me go to the query, and then I'm going to quickly add that same object that I showed in the slides. So see, you can see so many of these defined here already. So I'm going to pick which order years, and then as soon as I hit run query, it prompts me to choose a value. And as I said, there is no way I can just type in a value here. And this is persistent option is set. That's why it retains a value from the last run. Okay, and let me choose 2009. And since it allows multi-value, it's going to keep both 2010 and 9. Okay, and I'm going to just run. and you can see the report is now filtered for 2009 and 10. And it works just like a prompt that you have defined even with an object, and you can verify that by say user response, and then if I choose for prompt, it actually appears there. So I can show the values. Okay, so that's the first one. And for the next one, let me open up this. So I'm going to go to the query and show you the filter I have. Choose order date. Okay. And a prompt on that. And see, this is a predefined, as I run the query, since it's defined as a prompt, predefined filter, it prompts and I can choose the value. So let me choose this, but I need to choose something older because the data is a little older. Okay. And that, and click OK. So the way this is a little bit different from the previous prompt is, okay, it's already, it already picked up the value. So let me go ahead and rework changes. And I'm just going to close this and reopen just so that I can show you the SQL behind. Okay, so in the SQL, you can see it at prompt and choose date. Then the data type is date, and then mono, which means I can select only one value. And then this is free. That's why it pops up the calendar. I don't have to choose from a list of value. And then it's persistent. It retains a value in the next run. Okay. But as soon as I run and feed an actual value, it actually pops up in the SQL and run it in the background. So let me show you how it's defined in the universe. How can you create there? Okay. I hope you can see the IDT there. That's what I meant to share. So this is the particular prompt. So for defining this, I'll go about just like this, right click, new, and then filter. And this one is already defined, so I can show you what I chose here. So choose a name, of course, and then in the where clause, since it's a filter, I'll always go to the where clause, and that's where I'll define it. Just so that it's easier to see there, I'm going to take you to the bigger SQL editor screen. So in this case, I could use an actual column name, but this is a better practice to use a @select prompt. So you can find them under the functions. So @prompt is a function, @select is a function. So the way I'll do this is, so I'm going to copy this part just so that I can show you. So this will be, I have that object in my order date folder. So that lists all the objects in the business layer, right? And then as I double click, it pops up that particular object there. Then I go on and write my logic. And then I pick up prompt. So if I just select for now, you can see the hint, the actual syntax pops up here. And then if you click on this help button, it's actually going to take you to an help page. and it lists all the options, what they mean, with examples at times. So you can go and look at that help when you need to look at more options. But what I can do over here is that, so I double click on that at prompt. And as you can see what it does here, it adds all these comma, so that it kind of helps me to go with how many options and what are the different settings I can do here. So over here, and it's single quote, just so you remember. This is, say, choose date. So I go over that, and then I must give a data type, which is date in my case. And then I leave the next one. See how I leave the next one? I'm not going to specify any list of value here. So I leave that one, and then I go to the next, but I don't delete the comma here. I just let the comma be there. And then I define mono, which means only one value is can be selected. And then I go to the next one, then type in free. And then if I don't type anything here, it's going to be not underscore persistent by default. But in this case, I'm just going to recreate what I had before. Persistent, yeah. That's correct. And you may notice there is another comma there. I'm just going to let it be there. Then I click on the validate just to make sure all the syntax is correct, and then close. Click OK again. And one thing you'll probably get as you start defining a new one, that there is no reference table associated with it. So I do associate. I have to associate a particular table to that, and I need to choose the one that's coming from here so that all the joins and everything work properly. This particular order date is coming from order underscore date table. So that's the one I choose. Okay, you can see this is, you select that one, click OK, and then that's all the properties I defined here. And then I go and then I publish. And that's when it gets available in my report. So that's at prompt with at select. Okay, and you can, based on the requirement, this can become simple to a very complex logic. The next one, I'm trying, let me switch, if I can switch to the slideshow. Okay. So the next one, again, you will see that the text you have in the definition in the universe, it also translates like this in the actual SQL on the website. Okay. All right. The next one will be at prompt with parameter. Before that, let me show you how it works on the website quickly. And for me, if I show the website, how it works, how it yields, it's always easier to explain what's going on and how it's done in the universe side. Okay. So the filter that we just saw, you can see, I'm gonna select something from 2010, click OK, and there you go, that's my data. Okay. Now, one thing I like to discuss that why, what are the times that we really need to create these prompts in the universe? This is a case where if you know, if your web users have already told you, or based on the business scenario, business case, you know that this is going to be a very frequently used filter across at least 90% of the reports that people are going to develop in the environment. or you're working on, and this is a sales related universe, an order related universe, and date is always going to be a filtering object, then that's a good case when you want to define that in the universe, so that people can just drag and drop in the query and run it. Yeah. The next one is custom time period. Okay, so let me show you this, how it works. Okay, I'm going to refresh. For the sake of time, I have already built this once ahead of time. So you can see that when I try to refresh the report, I see these list of time periods. And by default, it's last week. Okay? And I can choose the last day. And if I click OK, the report runs for this. Now, you might notice that it's 2009. But that's why I put it out there that this is, I'm pretending the current date to be May 13th in 2009 because the data is old. Okay. So if you pretend that today is 2009, then as I choose last day, so this is my min and max date, just so that you can see. The report is filtered for it goes back just one day. And I also added this SQL, the data provider SQL here, just so that you can see what's going on. So this is how the SQL looks like. Okay. That if last day is equal to last date and order date is less than 5/13/2009 minus 1, and so on, then it will run the SQL and filter accordingly. And if I refresh, choose last month, it's gonna go back from 5/13 to April 13th, right? And this is a very useful scenario and very common scenario that you often have to write a report based on what is today's date. In a real scenario, instead of 5/13/2009, you will write a get date or sys date based on whatever the database is. That's how the syntax will change. But that will be the formula for the current date in the database. And to write a dynamic report and dynamic query, you cannot feed the current date every day because most of the times the reports are scheduled and they just need to run on their own without anyone having to manually feed that value, right? In those cases, this kind of prompts will just do that. It will pick up the sys date or the current date from the system and just kind of feed that and then calculate automatically the past 7 days, past 3 months, 6 months, year to date, all those kinds of different typical time periods that you need to write your reports on: month to date, year to date, last 12 months, last 6 months. All those kind of prompts can be defined just like this. And you do need that to be defined in the universe, because you cannot choose a current date just like that within the Webby query, right? In this case, this is how my query looked like, the adjusted custom time period. I have called this adjusted so that it's 5/13/2009 is the current date. And again, this is, I added that because my current date is not truly sys date. And I have data beyond 5/13/2009. Let's take a quick look at the actual object, how it's defined in the system, because I have used a parameter and a list of value to define this, okay? So in the business layer, I have these two drawers, one for parameters and one for list of values. So if you check here, I have defined this parameters called custom time period, and this is the prompt text. Data type is string because the values that I'm going to pick up here are string. And I have associated a list of value. If I click on this ellipsis, it's going to ask me whether, excuse me, list of values if I want to pick from on a business layer object. So if I pick the first one, then I'll choose an object, say order year or product names or states, and based on the data, it's going to populate the list. In my case, I want to define that list myself. So I chose a list of values defined in the business layer. And then I chose this particular list of values that I have defined. Okay. And then I set a default value, a constant value, which is last week. And that's exactly how it's defined. And then I unchecked allow multiple values so that I can only choose one of the periods and then keep last values. I uncheck that one. And you can set that up based on the requirement. In the list of values, let me show you how the list of values is defined. So it's very simple to define this one. Add any name, and then I just click this plus sign right here, and then keep adding these values here. Okay, if I wanted to say add another value, type that in. So click add row, this plus sign, type the value, and then just hit enter, and then that will get added. And once you define that, I can use that as part of the parameters. So list of values part of the parameters, and then let me go back to how it's used in the actual filter. So I have added this filter, and in the SQL, so this is my SQL, the add prompt custom time period. So this is the parameter that I defined. Okay, that's a parameter. If I didn't want to define a parameter, I could write the entire text or logic here, but this is much easier to do it here, right? And then if the time, so this add prompt custom period, this returns the value selected by the user at the runtime. Okay, so if that is equal to last day, and I'm adding this logic that the order date, as you can see, instead of selecting the column, I chose add select and order date greater than, and then my calculation. In this case, I have this actual date specified because I needed to go back to 2009. But in a real world, it will be a gate date or sys date or anything that's appropriate. And then I have this expression right here to calculate based on what the user has selected. Okay. Quickly, let me show you if I did not have to adjust the date, that's how it would look like. Okay. And then the last one I want to show you is, this is, I have it defined here. Okay. Heather, I want to do a quick time check.
Yeah, you're actually a little bit past. You're about 5 minutes over. I know
Okay.
our last presenter ran about 5 over, so that's fine. But if we could wrap it up in the next minute or so, that would be great.
Okay, sure.
Thank
I can do that. So quickly to show you the SQL that ultimately generates from the last filter. Is the last month, last month, last month, last month, because I chose last month at the prompt. That was my response to the prompt. So this particular statement or statement was kind of resolved as a true, and then it will calculate based on that. Okay. And let me quickly show you the very last example I have. So in this case, I'm going to run the report, and you can see I'm prompting the user to choose a region. And if I choose, say, Northeast, I get the data for New Jersey and New York, 2 states that's what you need to keep in mind. And if I rerun again, and let's say Southwest, I have 2 more states coming back. And if you look at the SQL next to that, because that's kind of generated based on the code in the universe, right? So if customer state, the customer state in and the case statements, that if Southwest is equal to, and again, you can see the first part are all Southwest because that's the response at the prompt. And if it's Southwest, you can say it's California and Arizona, okay? And that's how it resolves here. But I don't really have any object on region, but if I needed to run a report based on that, this is how I'll do. So this is a 2-step process. I first defined an actual dimension object. Okay, my first step is not a filter, but it's a dimension object that looks something like this. Case, it's a case statement. Again, you can define it in a different flavors of SQL, like you could do an and or type like the last one. But I wanted to show you how different ways you can deal with this. Case when if the prompt answer is, so it's this is the prompt text, A is the data type alphanumeric, and that's my list of value. This is an example of how I can um, define my own list of values, specify literally within the prompt at prompt function, and then just allow one value and cannot type anything. And if that is equal to Northeast, then New York. And based on the database syntax that's allowed, you might be able to sometimes enter multiple values here, but most of the times, if you have more than one values to be returned, so these are the actual states, right? If you have to pass multiple values of states for a selection of the region, you will need more than one case statements. You'll basically need more than same number of case statements as the number of values. All right, and then once I define the dimension, then I define the filter where my this is my customer state, and customer state in this, and that's all my filter is. Okay, and again I have associated that with the customer table, and I use this filter in my report, and it prompts for the region, and based on the region I choose, it passes the states to this particular object, and that's how it's done. And that would be the end of my presentation.